Welcome everybody to Endgame Sensei. Today, for the first time, you're going to get to see the Boomer GM throw around some pieces as well as some insults. We'll see if that stings as much as his words. We'll find out. I have a bad feeling for Kostya that Jesse may be able to back up the talk. You know, that's like an unfortunate thing. Sometimes the people talking the talk can actually back it up. And right when you're like, oh, it'd be so cool if like after all that trash they talked, they fell on their face. But no, then they just nail it with grace. So I've got a position for them. You guys can see it if you turn on the screen for a moment, like the video. You guys should be able to see that position. Do you see it? Or I can send you the fen if you want.
When you say the video, you mean just watching on the stream?
Yeah, just on stream. I've got the position up already if you guys want. Alternatively, here's a fen for it.
Yeah, let me just say I'm very happy to be doing this. It feels like an episode of Dojo Rivals.
Dojo Rivals.
And yeah, I just feel like, you know, every week Jesse gives us a fresh position. He gives us like 2 seconds to look at it. Yeah. And then if we don't immediately know the best moves, we get called out in the commentary. So yeah, it'll be good to give the sensei a taste of his own medicine.
Ghost is unintimidated.
Is this white to move? Who's to move, Bob?
Yeah, it's white to move. That's why in the fen after 1R4 P1/5K2, it says a little W there.
Well, I didn't see the fen. And you probably want us to be on chess.com, right?
Yeah, you'll want to be on chess.com in live chess. I don't know how to create a match anymore, so hopefully Kostya will just challenge you when the time comes, because he managed to challenge me last week. But I wanted to give you guys 10 minutes or so to look at this, because on the one hand, we want to play these endgames with a time control of like 2 + 30, right? So it's really like living off the increment. But on the other hand, in a real game, I mean, you would have had some prior knowledge coming into this position. Like, you would have each had some kind of plan and thought about what was going on, you know, what the mechanisms are in the position and who's trying to do what and who thinks they're playing for a win and all that, right? So I wanted to give you some time to orient yourself to it. Not necessarily because the first move is some weird puzzle trick move, but just I think this is going to give us a good game-like situation. Now, I should say this position comes from Sam Shankland. I just had the pleasure this past week of doing a 3-day endgame camp with him, which is my only qualification to sit in as the fake endgame sensei for one episode here, folks. Is ideally this is coming straight from the ferocious ferret's mouth, and hopefully I still remember what he told me a few days ago, and I can sort of pass on after they've mangled this endgame. I can then pass on to them, you know, whatever Sam told me about this position. I also played this position twice last week against one of the other members of that endgame class, so I sparred it too, and then had Sam talk us through it. And Sam also gave us like 5 to 10 minutes before it started to look at the position and think about it. And he had us say if we thought that, you know, we could win with white or draw with black, basically, to sort of divide people at first, but then we ended up having time to play both sides. But it was kind of like if you thought white was winning, you would get to try and prove it as white, and you thought black was drawing, you would get to prove it as black, divide up the class that way. And that was one of the things also with all these endgames. He always made us sort of guess the evaluation or result before playing it out. And then after we played it out, asked us if we changed our minds, which is something that, Jesse, you do most of the time when you're running this with Kostya and I, right? Or you ask the chat too, right? To pick an evaluation, like white's winning, white's clearly better, white's slightly better, it's equal, black's slightly better, black's clearly better. So you guys can do a similar thing here if you want. I don't know. Do either of you have like a strong instinct right away as to which side has what size of an advantage?
I guess just first intuitive, I would say white has a clear advantage.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be my first take.
Yeah. I'm going to try to give you guys, we're going to try and get you a chance to play both sides of it. So I may even like resort to Jesse's technique and send you guys a message when the result is clear so we can get both sides of it in. So I think that's the only way for Kostya to really win a Dojo Rivals match, is if he plays 2 games and scores more than 1 out of 2. Right? That's the only way to really do it, is to take it from both sides.
You guys are really out for revenge here. This is pretty rough, man.
Kostya is surprisingly brave. I would be trembling if he'd picked a position and I had to play Jesse. Oh, the insults that I would receive at the end. It's tough. I mean, Ding talked about the pressure, but he didn't have Jesse like commenting at the end, like, dude totally blew it, stinking up the dojo on move 3.
Can you imagine?
Oh, I'm so gentle with you guys.
I know, but that's the true pressure, Jesse. Quaking in our boots. Kostya, anything you want to say about this position before you get into it, or?
Yeah, I mean, clearly White's playing for 2 results. You got the extra pawn, and probably not spoiling anything by saying that, like, it's kind of all about timing the capture on a5, because I would guess that you don't want to do this super early. So it's an extra pawn, but not a super healthy one. But, decent winning chances, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have a feeling that, let me ask you each one additional question if you want to. Does the position look simple or complicated? Or sort of where on that spectrum does it fall for you?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's very complicated. Yeah. I think it's very complicated.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not like Morzevich MVL 2007 levels of like 2012. I don't know. But yeah, it's tricky. It's not easy.
You're like, calm down, David. It's a rook endgame. It can't be that complicated.
No, it's hard. I mean, mistakes will be made.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see. I want to try a thing here. Let's see. Friends. I'm going to try and follow one of you just so I've got that ready. So let me try and get that ready. See if you're both in here. I don't see Kostya in live chess. Are you in live chess, Kostya?
I'm not
or
there
play
yet.
chess?
I'm going there now.
Okay. I see Jesse, so I'm going to try to follow him. Unable to watch him, it says, but okay. But hopefully that'll work in a sec. All right. How about I give you guys, you want another 4 minutes to think about it before we start?
Sure.
Sound okay?
Sorry.
I'll give you guys another 4 minutes. I'm going to leave the audio of the Zoom call so that you guys don't hear me, and I'm going to just start talking about the position with our viewers. And in 4 minutes, I'll ask Kostya to start the first game.
Okay.
Okay.
So that we're still not clear who's white, who's black first game?
Yeah. Jesse, what color do you want for the first game?
Oh.
Just pick. Doesn't matter.
I'll be white first game. I don't know.
All right.
Sure.
All right. So Jesse will be white first game. Kostya, you'll be black. I'll come bother you guys in 4 minutes to get it started. Okay. Now we're all alone, chat. I hope you guys can still hear me. I want to tell you a little something about this position. So Jesse's first instincts were quite good on the fact that this position is actually very complicated. It is not like a very, very simple technical rook endgame. And one of the main reasons that this position is super complicated is that one of White's best ideas for trying to win the game is to basically run your king over, and you can do it to c1 or to c4, folks, because the king could walk around if it wants to. You guys see that? But to run your king to somewhere like c1 or c4 to defend the b pawn, sacrifice your king side, take on a5, and then you get a special kind of endgame which is called a race endgame. right? Now, race endgames by their nature are the most tactical, thrilling, double-edged of all endgames, pretty much. You can maybe say like rook and queen versus rook and queen, like heavy piece endgames where people can also play for checkmate can be pretty intense. But to me, like the race is a special kind of like really explosively hard to calculate, so many branches and variations, super interesting. So Jesse's take that this position here should be complicated is dead on, I would say. When I practiced this position and talked with Sam about it, it's quite complicated. That said, as Kostya said, it's not an insane middle game with a trapped rook and a rook sacrifice and 2 minor piece sacrifices and blah, 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 right? It is, you can sort of figure some of the things out. The main strategic options are clearly there. Okay? Yeah, these people are not cheating. These senseis fight with honor. They understand the rules of the dojo. They can think about the position in advance on their own, but they're not consulting engines or anything like that. It's totally fair. All of us are always trying to set a good example for all of you, right? In terms of how to progress, how to treat your opponents and other people in the dojo with respect, how to treat yourself with respect, how to treat the game with respect, right? So nothing dirty here. They've got 1 minute left to think about it. So for you folks, I'm going to ask you one other question. What plan do you like for white out of 3 different plans I'm going to suggest? One is you just start running the king to c1. Plan number 2, you play g3 first, then run your king to c1. Or plan number 3, you start by activating your king upwards around the g-pawn. And then you're going to have 2 sub-plans to plan 3. One is going to be to maybe try to attack on the king side with your king, and the other is going to be to then run across over like that. Okay, so that's plan 1, plan 2, plan 3A, and plan 3B. You guys can think about that for a second. And we'll see which plan Jesse uses right away and if he's clear on what his first move is instantly. I think straight out of the gate with 10 minutes, Jesse's going to know his first move. So we'll see. All right, guys. So if you're both ready and at your computers and got your mouses in hand, Kostya can start the games.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
All right, dude.
Challenge.
And good luck. The whole dojo will be rooting for both of you, and we appreciate the effort you put into teaching us.
Oh, come on with the soft talk. Wait, David, let me ask one question before we start. Are we going to have our mics live, or are we going to be silent?
No.
Okay, so me and Coach will just be silent. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sent the challenge.
Uh-oh. Oh. Okay, got it. Oh, is it we're doing 2:30. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Great.
You just, David. I think I'm live. All right.
All right. I see it. It's Jesse's move. We're good. I'm leaving the audio on Zoom. And now if they need me, they'll have to wildly gesticulate with their arms or something like that. He had his first move dialed in, right, folks? All right. Now tell me the truth, chat. Who are you rooting for? You guys rooting for the GM to show his merit, or has he abused us so much that you're feeling like he's got to come up and's coming? Cartier's on Jesse's team. Intellectual Badass is on Jesse's team. Dustin Dreams is on Jesse's team. Boomers all day. Oh, we got some Kostya too. Chumps for the win. Ooh, it's intense. This is like, in a sense, the greatest Dojo Rivals match yet, huh? All right, so Jesse goes for the plan of activating the king. I think this is the best plan, by the way, folks. I think Jesse immediately hit on the best of the 3 plans. Give Chumps a chance, right? Why can't we just give Chumps a chance? Here comes Kostya. King G7, F6, dramatic decisions out the gate by Kostya. He's immediately doing something non-standard. You guys know what standard like chump moves would be? Standard chump moves would be like, oh, I'll just put my king on f6 and, you know, just see what it does. And that's not necessarily bad. That's usually the best move, you know, is to just sort of centralize your king or whatever. I guess it's even more chump to like, I don't know, play king h8 and then just sit there, but, or move your rook back and forth on b1 and b2. But, okay. But Kostya is like undertaking something pretty intense immediately. He's made some decisions here. Is rook b7 more accurate? No. The rook is really well placed on b5 because you want to take the a-pawn at some point. This is where you've got a pawn majority for white is the 2-to-1 on the queen side. That's where you need to queen a pawn at some point. So having the rook on the a-pawn, you pretty much, there's very few cases where you're going to move your rook away before you've captured this pawn. That one's marked for death. You just got to pick the when and the how. Oh my lord, Kostya Kavutskiy. Oh my god. Oh. Nobody in Sam's Endgame class found this plan. What's Jesse thinking? Did Jesse see this plan coming too? Or is he impressed and surprised? He's having to give it a think. Dang, oh man, oh man. So folks, g5 was not possible last move, because it's just not defended enough times. That's simple mathematics, right? White can take twice. It's even check, so you don't get the b-pawn, and then the rook can come back to b5, and white would be winning. But king h6 suggests that Kostya might want to play g5 himself in a moment here. Whew. Dang. Now, I think that the source game for this position is Shanklin versus Predke. And Sam said he was shocked at how well Predke played this. Kostya's used a bit of time, though, we can already see, folks, right? Like, Jesse played his plan. He had dialed in. He knew he wanted to activate the king. Whether it was some calculation or also on principle, you know, he was going for activating the white king before sacking the king side. But what I can see is Kostya spent almost a minute on f6 and just over a minute on king h6, right? Now Jesse spent a minute and a half on king f3. That's his first big think, but he's still a minute ahead on the clock. So Kostya put a lot of thought and effort into this. He wasn't just convinced for sure out of that 10-minute think period. He wasn't convinced for sure that he was going to go for this plan. And remember, he had to bear in mind that Jesse might move the king to c1 or might play g3. So he had different things he needed to be ready for, whereas Jesse knew, like, I'm going for bringing my king up to g3. So maybe I would guess that Kostya already had this idea of like f6 and king h6, but was sort of evaluating whether he actually liked it, right? So like the idea had occurred to him, but he didn't know if he wanted to do it or not, and it is correct. It is basically straight up correct. And I'll try not to tell them that like immediately between games. Jesse reacting surprised to that rook b1 move. Is something wrong? He's looking for something on the ground. Did he lose his mouse? He looks, he's okay. He's okay. Rook b1, it's the best square for the rook, so Kostya is improving the rook slightly. It gives you more checking distance from behind if this king hangs out on f4 or g3 or f3 or tries to play g4, then Kostya's got a little more checking distance to bother the king from behind. So it's a perfectly reasonable move. It is not the best move there. If I remember correctly, the best thing to do is actually just to go straight ahead with g5. I think that's the best thing, is just straight up the plan that Kostya seemed to be going for without spending a tempo on rook b1. We'll see. Jesse's deep in thought. He's got a minute left. Now he's got to make a huge decision that he was unlikely to have already decided on and planned out during those first 10 minutes. Okay, So what's the deal? Why am I recommending this f6 king h6 plan, which is the plan that Predke used as well? The reason is, in general, what white's going to do at some point is make passed pawns on the queen side. That we can't avoid as black. And so the most important thing is, if you see in advance that you are g4 played, if you see in advance as black that you are going to be playing a race endgame at some point, right? Where eventually this king's going to come over to c4, let's say, and your rook's going to come back here and like kill the h pawn or the g pawn or something, and white's going to get the a pawn. What you want is you want all of these things as close as possible to queening an h pawn. Right? Okay, h takes g4, king takes g4 happening right here. So on g4, just a small tactical detail, folks. On rook check, the king could attack the rook, right? And that doesn't go well for black, who then can't take on g4. So I think, probably he did have to take, and he did. So I think that was correct by Kostya. But did I explain well enough why this is like the main plan for black? Did that make sense to folks in chat? Like, ultimately, white's plan is to defend the b pawn with the king and then take on a5. So you need to already see this game partly as like very likely a race endgame. And so any move you can play that inches your pieces up towards creating a passed pawn on the king side, those are the moves you've got to play. And in that sense, your king's better on h6, watch out for the time, Kostya, than on e6. Don't just flag Kostya, he'll call you a chump. Okay, good. Kostya knows what he's doing. He plays rook back to b2, giving up the checking distance and just holding on for now. Just holding on. All right. They've got a 30-second increment, and the time control, I wrote it right there. They started with 2 minutes, but they also had 10 minutes or so to consider the endgame before we got going. All right, so what can Jesse do now? Can he play rook a5? Can he run the king to c4? Or does he push h5 and try to trade that pawn? Big decisions. h5, f5 check looks like it might be a mistake. Like you're making a passed pawn for your opponent, right? The opposite of what you want to do. He's chosen king f4. But so h5, if black took, you could go takes, check, king here, and like this. And this is very good for white, actually, because now there's no passed h pawn to worry about later, right? At best, black's counterplay will be one passed f pawn. And that's usually not going to be enough against these two pawns. If you can now trade your e pawn for the a5 pawn eventually, which you pretty much always can. So this would be very, very desirable, except I think black would have had f5 check, kicking the king. King here takes, and now there's a passed h pawn. I have a feeling that would have been a bad choice for white. But I would need to calculate a bit to confirm, and now they're so low on time. We don't have a lot of opportunity to calculate for the rest of this game here. Does b4 work for white? I don't think so. Right here, white's move after rook b1, does b4 work for white? Basically, you're trying to calculate rook b4 takes, king here, that you're in the box of this pawn, and then you're queening this one. I mean, black can play g5, and that draws the king and pawn ending as well, probably. But an important thing to know is, like, b4 is almost never going to win because of pawn takes pawn. And this pawn just starts going, right? And when you go a5, here, black can always go here. You're just trading off all the queenside pawns, which will be a draw. Oh, controversial move from Jesse. Pushes the pawn forward, gaining some more space, cramping this a little bit, cutting off the fourth rank in some cases. Actually, a very important thing is when you bring your king over here and the opponent takes your h pawn and you take the a pawn, the e pawn is going to slow this rook from getting to a square like b4 or something. At the cost of sacking itself, though, right? Like black will be able to eat those pawns faster and have two connected pass pawns themselves. And Kostya is tired of waiting around and just goes rook h1, offering the pawn trade. Wow. Yeah, Jesse has to accept the trade pretty much. Oh no, he can't, because if he takes, check here, check, and Kostya takes on b3, and that would hurt so bad. So he's got to retreat. Oh no. Oh no, it doesn't feel like white's winning here. Kostya's just going to repeat the position once. Yeah, rook e1, takes, rook takes would not be good enough. That doesn't make a good pass pawn and gives white the duo, huh? But actually, folks, it could have still been a good move because here is a draw. So maybe Kostya could force an immediate draw here with this rook move. You know, and king here, come here. Maybe he had the room to just draw right here, folks, like this. But check out the live position. King f3, rook back to h1, king g3, rook b1, king g2. Like, get out of my h-pawn's face, says Jesse. And they've added a little bit of time back onto their clocks with a repetition. So they've got some resources, again, for playing this position out. Kostya's going to give a little Chekhovsky. Now Jesse's king's going to try and make a break for it. Oh, without the pawn on e3, though, it's so hard for him to take this pawn. Because Kostya doesn't have to take on h4. He can always go rook h3 and just make the position much more drawish. Oh, and I don't see how Jesse can put any more pressure on him here. We're going to give him another minute or two to show us if he sees an idea. But right now, it looks like Kostya's got the draw locked in from the bad side of this endgame. And I would say Jesse only managed to give him like 60% pressure. I don't think he fully pressed and threatened Kostya with the loss as much as he could have. Maybe this e4 move was not actually that good, this e4 move, right? Because like if you compare, like here's another option. You go like this as white, right? Kostya waits. You come here, 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 here. You guys see there's a lot more play in this position, right? This is like a real threat to Black's life. That's a real threat to Black's life. E4, by opening the third rank, seems to have given Kostya the defensive resources he needed to just always be attacking the B pawn. King G4 from Kraai. We will be switching the colors after this and playing the same position. Absolutely. We're going to try and get in 2 reps here. And if possible, I'll even try and explain things a little bit after they finish playing. Although they've played to some extent so well, I don't know how much there will be to tell them that they don't already know. Rook h2. Kostya feeling confident. His clock is filling up a little bit again, but still he's like a little bit cautious. He doesn't absolutely blitz, but takes a couple seconds. He's looking pretty comfortable here. I think this game's clearly a draw, though, and I don't think that rook a5, rook h3 gives white many chances. I guess, I mean, in a game you should still play it. You still have an extra pawn, but that's not going to be a win. I guess there's the idea like you go rook a5, check, takes, and then you try and put your rook on a7. So this king can't get back, but it also can't come forward because of rook h7 checkmate. That maybe still some pressure. I mean, it's certainly better than just repeating if you're white. You've got an extra pawn. So you guys see that rook a5, check, put the king on f4 to help bottle this king up. Rook takes here, and then rook a7. And then Kostya can put the rook behind the a-pawn. He can also get back here to try and offer perpetual checking and counterattacking, which makes sense. He can eventually run his king over, but when he does, king h5 takes h4 will be fast counterplay for Black and should be enough to hold the game in this position, right? With only a single pass pawn and these pawns split, Black should have enough counterplay to draw. I'm like basically certain, but you still ask Black some questions. Make them work for it. King g4, rook here is not checkmate because the king has g7. You need Black to play king h5 themselves looking for counterplay at the wrong time, and then you can checkmate them on h8 or h7. That's how that trap works. That trap, you don't like threaten the checkmate. You just box them in and see if they get anxious and go for the counterplay at the wrong time. King g3. I feel like he's like repeated. I could tell him to call it, or I could ask him if he's ever going to take on a5, boss. You ever going to go for something, boss? Still trying to win, boss? I don't know. Kostya's thinking as if Jesse's trying something. No, he's played rook e2. Oh, he's played something different. That's why. King f4. No toca el peón. So I think simplest is rook b2. But, oh no, this one's simple too, because if takes check, it's pretty decent, yeah. You can check here if the king goes anywhere other than g3, and if the king goes to g3, you can take here. Then rook b5, and, you know, it's possible. Okay, he goes for rook h2. Everybody's waiting in suspense for when Jesse takes on a5, right? It's like you wait, and you wait, and you wait. It's so dramatic. And then at some point he does it, right? I mean, Jesse's not just going to give a draw. He's got his boomer pride. He's not just going to take the draw. Plus, white is technically still, like, sort of obligated to press, shall we say. Like, honor bound to be like, well, technically, even if black can draw, my position is slightly better. I should try to win it, you know? It feels like he might have repeated 3 times. I don't know. He's got to take on a5 at some point. Whoa! From left field, another move. Let's see the impact on Kostya Kost. Solid. Kostya's mental is pretty solid, right? He's not a very rockable guy. I get upset when these things happen to me, but Kostya's pretty chill. Yeah, go for it. Root for the old man if you like. I think that's part of the beauty of this match, actually, is that we've got people rooting for each of them. That's dramatic. You're all well within your rights to root for whoever you want to. Shout out Joel Cato with the raid. Thanks, Joel. Good to see you there. Controversial. King on e5. So Kostya could play rook h4 and have rook a5, rook h5, right? Kostya has at least a defense there. At least a defense, right? There's nothing that can go wrong there. Just thinking about it. What about Jesse? Is he at all concerned about how he sort of hung a pawn with that e5 thing? Every time I see you, Joel, it's like you're winning a game. Bravo. Rook takes h4, right? And there's the famous skewerino. I mean, that's like the most basic of all rook endgame tactics, I would say, right? Is like when your opponent lines up their king and rook, that you can sometimes check the king and take the rook. I think that's like the #1 rook endgame tactic, probably. Fisher said, you want to see Kostya grind this for another million moves as black. Yeah. It'll make it epic. It'll put in question us getting a second game in, but yeah. But we can hope. Kostya Kost, thinking a long time about this juicy pawn. I would have snapped it up. I'm a little bit impulsive too. I've got all the psychological weaknesses in one, you know? You would think that someone has to either be impatient or patient. But like, how could you be too patient and too impatient at once? How can you be too confident and you know, too worried? But I've got all of them somehow at once, you know? So for me, it's like a real mess. You know, I'll play too fast when I should think. I'll play too slow when I should just do it. Like, oh, everything, man. But, yeah. He grabs the pawn. Jesse's king heads to the queen side. So his concept, he seems to have taken this into account. He was like, yeah, I'm dropping this pawn. His plan is the rook comes here to cover the 5th rank. He walks the king to b6. Whew. Now you're not playing with boys anymore, Kostya. That's what Jesse would say, right? He'd be like, now you're playing with big boys. It's basically the same thing. What are you trying to say, Jesse? Nobody knows. But that's what he would say, and it would sound really intense, right? Like, you're not playing with the boys anymore, Kostya. This is the big leagues. This is the big boys. But yeah, Jesse saw this rook takes h4, rook h5, whole defensive concept, and he's going for it right here. So he wants to play king here, king here, king here, b4, and then defend the g-pawn with his rook. That almost seems too slow. King c6, king b6, king a5, b4 is 4 moves. g5, g4, g3, g2 is 4 moves. So then he'll have the rook here, and the pawn will be on g2, and he won't be able to get to it, right? Oh, so he more or less agrees to a draw. Yeah, I think. Draw agreed. Great. Okay. Awesome, guys. Fantastic first one. Nice agreeing to the draw there so we can get another game instead of playing A pawn first, G pawn forever. Love it. You guys good to go for the next one?
Yeah. Yeah, I just need to use the toilet real quick.
Oof. All right. Just start the game so your time can run. Because that's how rough it is in tournaments.
All right, we can play.
No. You take a break. Jesse and I will talk about your endgame skills while you're gone. Go for it. So what did you think, Jesse? How's the chump?
Well, I regret playing e4, dude.
Playing e4, yeah.
I didn't appreciate that the rook was gonna tag me on the 3rd rank.
Right. That instead of going after the h pawn, he would just be going to like h3.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, maybe I could have done the beginning differently, but otherwise I felt like the approach was more or less okay until I played e4.
Yeah, e4 was interesting. It wasn't a move I'd thought of before, but it seemed like the 3rd rank weakening was a problem. What was the positive idea behind e4? Like, can you tell us like why you wanted e4?
I thought, black was gonna have. I just figured like I'm gonna go across to the queen side anyway.
Yeah.
And black is gonna have to someday play g5. That's
yeah.
what I thought. And then I might as well put my pawn up one more square.
Okay, so you were thinking of like an HG-FG universe where you would maybe also push the e-pawn as like an extra resource?
Right.
Just one step up. Okay, cool. That makes sense. I was wondering if you were trying to block the rook, like if the rook went to h4, you're trying to block the rook from going to b4 in some case.
Well, maybe that too, but the first...
The main thing was, yeah, okay, to have the e-pawn ready as an extra ingredient. Cool. Overall, Kostya's play okay, though? He didn't, like, stink things up to you?
Honestly, I mean, I'm not sure how black should play.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really complicated for me. So he just kind of going for, I don't know, what else are you going to do? Either do that or you're going to play something like f5 and sit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a hard choice.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you guys, chat is evenly split in rooting for the two of you, and they are excited to see what goes down in the last game.
All right, yeah, let's go. So because I need to get out of here in a little bit.
Yeah. I am sending the challenge.
Got it. Great. Will he go to E1 or G1?
There they are. There they are. Moment of truth.
David, we still hear you, boss.
I know. I'm leaving the computer audio. All right. Goes to G1. There it is. You support the boomer GM who's not actually even a boomer. Yeah. But at least he is actually a GM. King G7. Simple. And now will he stop and think about Kostya's f6? No, he's going to play the same plan. In his comments between games, it seemed like Jesse was not like completely convinced what black's plan should be. But he goes for the same one as Kostya anyway. And he's going for it pretty fast now. Okay, so maybe he was a little bit more ready. We're not vetting the positions to be fair. We're vetting the positions to be interesting, Ted Bradley. Yeah? The key is for the positions to be interesting, to test your skills, or to teach you skills through the playing of those positions. So, yeah, it's actually an option, Arsenal, for white to trade. And we didn't mention this in the first game. White has an option to trade on g5 and just start motoring that e-pawn, right? And somebody else mentioned that you could, right after you trade, you could play rook b6, cut off the king, relegate it, keep it away from its pawns, and then you can combine that with starting to push the e-pawn. Yeah, so there's some options for Kostya here. There's also a very, very interesting and tactical move here, g4. So I'd love to see Kostya either trade or play g4 maybe, give us a different flavor than the previous game. Oh yeah, the previous game, Kostya hesitated himself as black didn't play g5. He just played rook b1. Jesse's playing Kostya's plan, but actually more precisely and confidently and aggressively here, right? And I believe that's the right way to go. That's how Alexander Predke played, which really, really impressed Shankland, that Predke went straight for g5 like this. So we'll see. g4 is super interesting move. Trading is also interesting. Goes for the trade. Get the recapture. Just because you want to cut the king, or is he happy where the rook is? I think the rook can always come back, so it may be worth it to throw in this move, cutting the king off, and then do you get going, or do you try and put your king here and then get going? No, rook takes g2 is so much counterplay. So, like, with the way Jesse's playing, what he's strongest against is anything where white sacks the g-pawn, right? Anything where you activate your king or you come across to defend this. Jesse's ready for all the races now. So he's really cutting across white's main winning method by playing his pawns on the king side up the board so quickly. The g3 will be a slight improvement for Kostya at some point, maybe. I think cut off the king, and then maybe g3, and then maybe e4. And what can Jesse do other than put the rook on b1 and try and harass the g-pawn from behind? Looking for counterplay. Once this rook's off of the a-pawn, it seems like you've got more room to counterattack the g-pawn. But bear in mind that white can always play rook back to b5, suddenly attacking all three of your pawns. I feel like Kostya will go for rook b6, king g7, g3. But he might even go for e4 right there. Actually, e4 makes sense because if your opponent's going to go for checking distance, then you had no value in playing g3, so you might as well just leave it there. So the only reason, I'm just going to throw in a move, folks. The only reason you would play g3 is if you're afraid of this immediately kind of thing, you know, just sort of throwing the pawns at you to simplify. But I think in general, that's probably losing for black, right? Like, how are you going to defend down two pawns now? When white can always trade the e-pawn for the a-pawn as a transition. I guess the only reason would be if this is coming fast enough. So it would be a calculation. Okay, let's see what's happening in the game. Let me refresh the actual game. Oh no, it's just Kostya getting low on time. That's all that's flashing is his clock. His red 30 seconds. Okay. He makes the transition now. Woo! That's a shocker. So he wants to cut off the king. He thinks it's a big deal, but he wants to collect the pawn before taking his rook off the 5th rank. Jesse's not convinced by this. I'm not convinced by this. What is Kostya doing here? I don't know. I'm unconvinced at the moment, like Jesse, you know. Skeptical, but open to the fact that all kinds of things happen in chess. Oh, he wants the rook next to the pawn. Okay, feels like you're going to have to get behind it, let it go, and then he's asking Jesse a tough question. If you move the king back, you lose pawns. If you don't move the king back, he gets to check and advance one more row. So Kostya is getting the pawn all the way to a6, I think, with the rook on the 6th rank. That's pretty good. Pretty sure his plan now is a5. And that means Jesse's going to want to play h5 and king h5. h4 and king h5 for counterplay here, I think. Since you can't stop this from getting here, I think you want to strengthen your counterplay. I think you need your counterplay here. Because, okay, with the rook in front of the pawn, you can often hold just by checking the king. With the rook on the side of the pawn, any king march over to the queen side, the king will always be sheltered by the rook from checks in either direction, and the pawn will always queen. So Jesse still needs to play this position like a man in a race, desperate for counterplay. Got to go for counterplay. If white's rook were on a8, you would hunker down the king on g7 probably. Keep your eye on the e-pawn. But I think here it should be h4 for sure. h4 for sure. Chat's thinking, someone in chat's thinking rook a4 for black here. I think if rook a4, white sets up this. And that's really tough. How do you get out of the way of this too, right? Because we didn't even get the king to... Oh, it's so critical to get the king to h5, folks. Because this way, you're even like going down another rank. This looks like death, folks. This looks like death. I would be surprised if you could still defend this position. Jesse's done something else. Jesse went for king g6. So against check, he's going to put the king on f5 instead of h5. From here, he's strong-ish for doing this, but he's also got his eye on the e-pawn with his king. So he's looking for a really active king and keeping these pawns defended. Yeah, it makes sense too. This doesn't look bad. I would have probably blitzed out h4, king h5 really fast. This looks fair as well. I was like, can white play e4 and take away that square? No siree. g3 limiting this. Taking his time is Kostya. He can always do this thing later. Yeah. And Jesse's got to play just some sort of waiting move, you know, like king f6, basically. I think he doesn't have anything where he really wants to rock the boat here. Rook a1 is an alternative. It's unclear if the rook's better tagging the pawn or bothering from behind. You know, rook a1 does let the pawn go to e4, which is, you know, a question. And in fact, the way you would execute that would not be e4 right away when the king comes to f6 and has access to e5 against the check. I think what you would do against rook a1 is you give check here, here, check immediately. Here. Actually, maybe it doesn't matter. Yeah, maybe it doesn't matter. All right. So rook a1 is probably possible. To me, the simplest is just waiting with king f6. Because I'm not, you know, is what's white going to do other than check and push? And we're ready for that. Yeah, Jesse holds still as well. You know, one thing that old people and GMs have in common, and Jesse belongs to, you know, the overlap in the Venn diagram. Old people and GMs tend to have Sitzfleisch, you know. They tend to be pretty tough about just sitting there for a while, if that's what you got to do. Or if that's what it seems like you want to do. Jesse is unlikely to get a queen this game. Kostya adds time to his clock. His red clock was in dire need of it. He's been burning up his time this game. He's yet to convince me at all about this dramatic pawn trade he made with rook takes a5. But they're playing well enough where I don't feel like I could beat them from this position or anything like that. They're making like a lot of good moves and one or two decisions that are unclear. Not, you know, when I question the decision, it's not necessarily terrible. It's just, you know, it's not turning a win into a draw or a draw into a win. It's just something that's open to debate. Okay, so Kostya basically playing a waiting move. He wants to move his king or his pawn, right? So he wants to like play king e4 at some point. Why not just play king e4 actually, now that we asked the question, right? And basically black should play h4 then. Takes, takes, and then you come back to get that pawn. But that would give up the e-pawn, which would be a draw. Feels pretty safe for black to throw the h-pawn, right? In most cases. Not sure what Kostya's getting at, how he's going to put any more pressure on Boomer GM. e4, rook f5 at some point to cut the king off. Okay, that's a good idea, Arsenal. Hard to do as long as the rook stays on the third rank, which it is doing so far, right? So that's... We can see, you know, rook a1 is the other option to get extra checking distance and harass. But I like just sitting like Jesse's doing. I approve of that because I think keeping the pawn tagged, stopping the e4 idea, to me, that's really the cleanest approach to this position, I think. I would handle it the same as Jesse so far. King e4 now makes sense, yeah. And then maybe the moment white comes out with the king is the moment where black has to pull the trigger on the counterplay. We'll see. Because to my mind, king e4 would threaten rook d6 check and a6. That looks rough for black anytime white gets that progress. Because you have to understand, it's not just one row of progress. If your check forces the king to the 7th rank, you've got a guaranteed second row of progress. And then that pawn, I mean, black is completely tied down. So I think like king e4 is a really big threat, and black is forced to respond. You can give the side check, or you could pull the trigger. But that's it. You have to do something. Because there's nothing really wrong with throwing the check. If white blocks, you take, so you force them back. Okay, here he comes. He's going to move up a rank at this point. No, he's going to repeat on the d file first as well. Jesse's just, yeah, staying loose. You want to save your energy for when your opponent actually threatens you with something or comes up with some idea. You want to stay alert and not just play like completely random stupid moves on your 30 seconds. Not stupid, but like not completely thoughtless. You never know when a little trick's going to come up. But you also want to save your real energy for when the opponent does something to you. You know, you can't agonize over like, oh, his rook's on the D file. Oh, it's on the C file, right? Like, you've come up with your idea. You're sitting. Now you want to sit. You know, so we see Jesse's using 2 seconds, 2 seconds, 2 seconds, 5 seconds. Like, that's appropriate here. Is Kostya going to come to the 6th rank now, finally? Oh, man. Draw. It's a draw. Was that on purpose, Kostya? Hey, Kostya.
I don't think you can hear you.
Was that on purpose, the repetition?
Yeah, I didn't really know how to really try at that point.
Okay.
And I figured we could just talk about the game.
Yeah, we didn't see too much either, so fair enough. All right.
How bad did we stink it up, boss? How bad did we stink it up, boss?
You know, I think that strategically you guys did great. Like, your first conclusions for what to do for white and black are both the approved plans. Like, activating the white king around the G-pawn is probably the strongest plan. At least that's what Shanky thought. You know, and I'm not going to try and be particularly clever here. I'm just going to try and parrot what he told me, you know. And then he says that, you know, king going to h6 is like the key defensive plan for black. And he was very impressed that in the actual game, Predke found this. And so by extension, I mean, I think he'd be impressed that you guys found it.
Why don't we put up a analysis board real quick and we can talk about a couple of moments.
I've got an analysis board, but I guess I would need to make it a classroom for you guys to join me, right?
Exactly.
All right. So let's make a classroom here. New room.
Yeah, well, it kind of felt like the only way I could do anything other than just sitting on the position. So, yeah, didn't really feel like sitting.
You didn't feel like sitting?
Yeah, I didn't feel like sitting either, man.
All right. So I've sent you guys a link over there. I'm going to give Kostya full control.
When
Maybe
you say
also
over there.
oh, I got it.
Yeah.
In Discord, but also All right, let me give you full control as well. All right, so did you guys consider king e1 and g3 as well as the plan you used for white?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that I just concluded was incredibly chaotic. Whereas it seems like the other way, white has good pressure.
Yeah. Those are chaotic. I mean, you have chances to play for a win with both of those approaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are chaotic. And Sam estimated that black has enough resources to make the draw, but you're going to get a lot of race endgames that way, right? Where you get like two pass pawns and black's h pawns come in, and you can also lose if you blunder. You've got the room to lose, but you have more room to win than if you just sort of like sat around. So it's an option, you know, if you want to cast the die. Either could be done.
Well, so okay, okay, so here we go. Let's just go. So we both started this way, but I think here Kostya played rook b1.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't want to play g5 myself.
Yeah. Right. Sam thought g5 right away is important and most critical. And it's what Predke played.
So the question is, after rook b1, do I have something, and was g4 correct?
Yeah. My thought is that g4 would be correct. I was able to win one sparring game in this position as white by trading the g-pawn and then playing h5 and trading that for the g-pawn, and then you run your king towards c4 once black doesn't have a g-pawn to queen.
Right. Okay, so this makes sense. So it was the e4 move.
So that makes a lot of sense up to here. Now, what did Kostya play in this position?
I think he waited one more move.
He waited one more move. And here h5 would fail to f5, right?
Yeah, well, I'm not ready to do h5 yet.
So I think here maybe you played e4.
No. I played king f4 first.
Played king f4, okay.
Let's see. So rook b2, king f4. I think he waited, and here I played e4.
And here you played e4. So that move's got to be a mistake.
Yeah.
And
so the question is, am I winning on king e4?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the main question here is, can you win by running your king towards c4 at this point, right?
Yeah, I was going to think about f5 here.
Okay. Sure.
Let's just say black can do, so I'll explain, because Kostya was away. I played, it was obvious, I missed that I was going to get tagged with rook h3, but I also was like, I was worried about f5, and also like, ultimately, like, it's pretty scary. Like, if I cross the barrier this way, then this is going to happen. And if I go down to here, am I maybe just being a chump where, you know, black's g-pawn is going to be pretty fast.
I think to win those races between the pawns, it's going to be very important for your king to have a post more around c5 than around c2. And basically, you know, if we talk about the starting position and the option of playing... Sorry, I'm just going to show the starting position for folks for a second.
Yeah.
If you go to king c1 and black plays rook g2, and you take on a5 and black goes rook g4, like, white's ahead on time, right? Like, you're one or two moves ahead in the race. And what's kind of giving black maybe enough to hold on is that the king's badly placed on c1. That's why you wouldn't go for the king c1 plan. Right? Is because the king being badly placed, not really helping to queen it, is less dominant. So in this position, so here. In this position, if you head back to c2, you're not getting a position very, very different than the king c1 kind of plan, although trading one pawn does change the kingside rush a bit. But you would certainly prefer to put your king on somewhere like c4, c5, b6, so that your pawns are really coming through. So...
and so, right, so to post this Kostya's question of f5, I think what I can do a couple things. So, but my default was just going to be to play king f4 and aim for e4.
Trade one more pawn now, sure.
Trade one more pawn and then go.
Yeah, that could make sense. Secondary plan against f5 would be to move your king to f6.
Yeah.
That also looks
reasonable.
viable, right? Like it definitely leaves black with questions.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think so just to explain my mistake to myself, like I missed counterplay, and then also I wanted an improved version of that king e4 is basically what I wanted.
Yeah.
I didn't want to allow any f5s, all that other stuff. And it still takes pretty big cojones because it's like black, there's f5, there's rook h1 straight away.
Yeah.
You know, there's rook h1 after we move it around. So
yeah. But I would say at this point, Jesse, like if you want to win the game, like you just have to like play king e4, like knowing that you're not a chump, you're not going to blunder and lose, and it's giving you like your chances to win, right? Like it's what you have to go for.
It's, you know, even a move like g5, I don't know, man. It's going to be tight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not at all clear to me that I'm winning this thing, actually.
Yeah. G5 right here, maybe you trade it and keep your king on it and then push your e-pawn. Like you haven't gone that far away yet.
True, and of course black can wait on this thing, but even here, like if we wait, well, king f5, I have just king h5. I don't think you want to put the king on f5.
Let me see. Let me see.
Let him see.
Let me see. Can I get really risky here? At the moment where you can't bully white's king. Whoo! Goes passive. Passivicus.
I'm not passive. I'm going to take your pawn.
No, you're not. You're not getting that pawn is not for sale.
That pawn's for sale. He's already sold. This is the draw. You're gonna have to go fetch my G pawn.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm ready. I'm ready to fetch. Or should I not even go yet? Should I still king e7 first? I was afraid of king h7 from black, right?
Yeah.
Like if I get too fancy.
Okay, but let's just say we're a little bit past. But any case, let's just say the obvious. Whoa, did someone turn on the eval bar?
Yep. I wanted to check. Because you were about to like say like, we don't need to know if white's winning.
No. I was just, you know, long variation, wrong variation, just thinking. I mean, for sure, I should do it.
Yeah.
It's just,
okay.
I'm just trying to imagine what the eval is here.
Yeah.
And also what black should do, right? Okay, so wait a second. So before we go deep in this, so it looks then what we're saying is that rook b1 here was a mistake from black and that g5 is more critical.
I think so. Mm-hmm. And in terms of winning your game and what black's position we were just at with king e4, I think both f5 and g5 were a little too committal. And if white's plan is to march the king to c4, at least let white go to d4 before you play like your f5 or g5 move. And because it's really tight. Like if you're black, it's very easy to lose this position.
Mm-hmm.
I think that king f5 rook a8 thing from white, I was basically winning, honestly. When you played g5 and moved too soon, and the white king could come to f5. That looked...
So, Kostya, when I was white here, I wasn't entirely certain. I thought you were going to go g5. I wasn't certain. The thing I was kind of drawn to, and I'm not certain about this, is rook b6.
Mm-hmm.
Just with the intention that if king g6, hg, and I split the pawns and I claim that's a small victory.
I think that's a huge victory, yeah.
If g4, this is where I was a little bit, more than a little bit uncertain about what's going on with my life, you know?
Yeah. But can I propose a simpler move for Kostya? King g7 unpinning against rook b6. Just saying, like, this is what you would play if hg, fg, rook b6 check. You would go king g7.
Okay, fair.
King g7.
So, in that case, we're just transposing to this thing here.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, something of this kind.
Yeah, and I thought, right, that's basically what could have happened.
Yeah. I thought Kostya was going to do something like this, and then maybe like G3 and E4. I was really surprised when he traded the A pawn for the B pawn.
Oh yeah, Kostya, did you at least yell at him then, boss?
No, I didn't yell at him. I just said that I was surprised, and I was waiting to see the idea.
That was my one chance. Because, well, I was thinking about like slow playing it with G3, but I just thought Black is getting H4 in very quickly, and
but your king's on that for the moment.
So, anyways, I would play, if I was white here, I'd think about E4.
I think he's only going to play H4 if you run your king to the C file or if he needs to. For now, with your king on F3, he's doing nothing but sit.
Well, I'm trying to say that I'm improving my pawn.
No, I'm saying what Black's going to do, because Kostya was like worrying about you playing H4. I'm saying as long as the white king's on F3, Black's not playing H4. Black's sitting.
Yeah. On G3, I thought Black would play H4.
Okay.
If E4, then yeah, I feel like Black just sits here.
Okay.
So, and you could maybe play H4 if you decided you didn't like it, but you want to play like King F7 or something?
Yeah, I think King F7 looks good.
All right, they say passed pawns must be pushed.
Yep.
Let's say Rook B1.
B1, huh? Okay. Well, I feel frisky now.
Oh yeah, I agree. I had my mouse on the same king, Jesse.
I don't know what's going on still, but so Kostya, wait a second. Just to improve it, why don't you play? Just wait. If Pruess wants you to wait.
Yeah, Rook C2 is fine. Rook C2 is good.
Well, no, it's White's move here, and I didn't play Rook B2, so you still have to make a move. Maybe King E7.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a harder life. But still, right? G3, and it's still a little hot.
Yeah.
It's definitely fun.
Yeah, this position's got a bit of play.
Yeah, no, there's still play here. I just thought by getting.
Let me just look. Wait, before
maybe I had a chance as well.
Okay, wait. Let me just see one thing here. G3. So, I was going to ask the question of H4.
Mm-hmm.
Top.
Yeah, the rook taketh. King covers it.
So like this, right?
Yeah. Rook B5.
And now I get to do that, though.
Okay, King H3.
But you can't really take on A5.
Is Rook E3 to B3 enough always here?
It looks, yeah, looks like a dead draw to me.
Okay. Let me try one other thing then. I got one other sick move I can try. Whoo! Yeah. I love it when you play a good move in a rook endgame. It feels so good.
The weird thing is, though, okay, here I go here.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're going to do, actually.
What's that?
I'm not sure what you're going to do.
Okay. I'm going to learn from Kostya and trade my winning pawn on the queen side. Then I'm going to move forward.
That isn't it, boss.
What's that?
I said that's not it, boss.
Did you say that's not it to me?
That's not it.
Yeah, it might not have been it.
Guys, I gotta go. That was really good, though. So let me just put it in my own words, David. So the idea is that King H2 is King G1 H2 is the boring way to play, probably the best way to play. And then after, basically, we get this position, and probably G5 is the most contentious.
Yeah.
And so White needs an idea here.
Well, here, one last thing I'll tell you is that Shanklin played G4. which
That's
is
interesting.
very interesting and complicated. He said there's only one way for black to draw against this line. And a bunch of the people in the class incorrectly guessed to do this, trying to solve their problem with tactics like this. But what they didn't realize is you can actually go take the H-pawn, and it's done. Goodbye. White just comes back, right?
They didn't tactic this?
They miscalculated it.
That's a natural one to miss. Okay.
Yeah. So you got to trade on G4 instead, right? And then here you have to just sit. You check him and you go back, and you play this position here.
Ooh,
and it's very much like that position we had just a half a second ago.
Yeah. Right. And even this position, it's like black's, drawing by a tempo. It's knife's edge here.
Well, it shows I had the right idea with G4.
Yeah. Yeah. You did.
Okay. Yeah, that was
interesting.
That was a good one.
Steven.
Yeah. Yep.
Good
Absolutely.
Stuff.
Good stuff, guys.
We tied the match, so we're co-champions.
Co-champions. All rook endgames are drawn. Yeah, so I feel like in each case you guys drew fairly comfortably with black. For one thing, you both used this f6 king h6 g5 plan, which is not obvious but super important strategically. Like seeing that you need counterplay on the king side for black in most scenarios. So that was like really strong and helped you guys draw with black. As white, Jesse was a little reluctant to pull the trigger with like abandoning the king side and running king e4, king d5, letting it hang out. And Kostya, your pawn trade was probably not the highest percentage choice in your game as white, I think, compared to like pushing the e pawn up the board maybe in that end game. Mm-hmm. Or trying this weird G4 move that Sam played maybe also offers a few chances. But
yeah, I definitely didn't consider G4. That was nice.
Yeah. Okay. Cool position. Hope you enjoyed playing some moves on here, Jesse.
That was good, man.
And
I need practice with this 30-second stuff. It's very interesting how much time.
Yeah.
I know it, of course, but just to see it, how much time you can stockpile.
Yeah, Kostya's really like a pro at using his time in these 30-second endgames, and like taking the moment where he wants to repeat and add like 2 minutes on his clock, and then when he wants to think it down, and then he's got that stuff down. But anyway, next show, everybody, Jesse will probably be back to being the endgame sensei. But I think it's really great to have a chance to practice a little bit too. So, I appreciate that normally you do all the work and we just get to play. So I enjoy it.
That's cool. And there was I assume there was some other end games too that you guys did.
Oh yeah, we did a bunch. But by next week I'll probably have forgotten them, so I won't be able to show you guys anything more. Yeah. All right. So that's the end of Endgame Sensei. See you, Jesse. And Kostya and I, we're going to look at the calendar here, and let me see if I need to go or not. I could maybe show people how the Shanklin-Predke endgame ended real quick.
All right, guys. Bye-bye. I got to run.
Cheers.
All right. See ya.
All right, folks. Let me try to get my video camera on and show you guys. Why can't I get it to work? All right. All right. So let me just show you guys how that game ended as a tiny little bonus here, the Shanklin game. So in this position here, G4, H4, King G4, Rook check, King here, Rook back here. He now trades, takes, and goes here. So now he's threatening to bring this pawn to a6, tying this king some more. And black doesn't have a lot of time to both get the rook behind and get the king back here. So g4 check is an important move from black, and I think he puts the king here. And now it's also a critical moment. So one way to try to do this would be to just keep pushing the g-pawn. And the other would be to play king g7. So if you just push the g-pawn, then I wonder about this endgame here. Let's see. It's like somewhat tough for black, right? Because the kings and pawn are coming at least this far. That looks rather risky, right? The idea with pushing the g-pawn, of course, is to distract the king, trade this off, and then reach a theoretical drawn endgame against just the a-pawn. And king g7, as the alternative, also loses. And this is a really vicious trap that Shanky had in mind. He can transfer the rook here to e4, defending both of these pawns. And he just wins the g-pawn with the king, and then wins the game. That's dead lost as well, immediately. So the defense for black's really unobvious even here. The only drawing move is rook b4 check, not putting the rook on a3. I think that's, not obvious. Surprising find. The game goes king f5, king g7, rook check, king g8, rook a6, and now you start pushing this pawn away. A5, g2, rook check, and then black's going to take this one and hold a draw. So what I want to say about how Sam played this endgame that's a little bit different than how Kostya and Jesse did, and I hope I'm saying this with full respect, and I know Kostya's watching, is Sam played the endgame in a way where black had to find a bunch of really, really hard moves. And I feel like Jesse and Kostya, when they played with white, they didn't put the black player in quite as tough a situation. Where it's like you've got 2 or 3 candidate moves and one of them draws and 1 or 2 of them lose. And I feel like Sam managed to do that to Predke like 4 or 5 times in this endgame. From g4, for example, where this is the only way, and even as it, wrong line, right? And even as the game resolves towards here, that g4 was the only move, and that here rook b4 was the only move, right? That's at least 3 only moves that black had to find that are kind of concrete and tricky. So I think that's like an extra thing we can see. Like, not all draws are equal, right? Shanklin Predke, the game was a draw, but Shanklin made Predke play a bunch of tough moves, and Sam said, he even expected like a 26-50 FIDE, that there was like, a 50% chance that he would blunder one of these things. And so Jesse should have brought the king over towards the queen side at the right moment, made Kostya play the tactical part of the endgame, right? Instead of saying like, well, the tactical part's a mess and probably not quite lost for black, force black to find like a series of only moves in the messy position. And then, like from Kostya's position, try to stretch black's defenses with the e-pawn before trading one more pawn. Would have also been an interesting thing to try. So, I think it's like a fantastic and exciting end game. If you guys want, I can show you my games too. We could make this like an epic episode. I could give you a sense for how this whole thing went. So, I have my score sheets over here. I can show you guys 2 more games from this same position to really like deepen it. Because let me say, like, everybody's watching this, sparring these end games like this is crucial to getting better at chess. This is crucial to the Chess Dojo training program. This is a pillar of what we do. I was very happy to get to do this with positions selected by Shankland and against strong opponents. And you all should be trying to like imitate what we're talking about, what we're doing here, right? So, yeah, I've got like live score sheets from sparring in person on this position here. Okay, so what I want to emphasize is when you're doing this sparring, repetition's really important. You want to get deep into the position. And so you guys have seen Jesse and Kostya play it twice. You've seen Shankland against Predke now. I'm going to show you 2 more. We're going to get like deep so you really feel like you know what's going on. Because you haven't seen any games where White just sort of sacks the stuff, right? And that's sort of like the subtext that neither Jesse nor Kostya went for that dramatic and scary position. But you have to have some understanding that to play this position. And I'm also going to say, folks, if all else is equal and you're playing somebody who you think is worse than you and you've got these options, you actually have better chances of winning by going for this kind of an option, right? Look, let's just show you what we're talking about here, right? This position is an absolute mess. I think to some extent, Jesse's personal preferences with chess are not to play lines like this. But all being equal, if you think you're better than another player and you want more chances to win, like go for something like this. Sharpen things up, hype it up. Like, you can outplay somebody here from either side is part of the danger for White. Okay, so here is... Actually, let me show you my game with White first because it's more similar to their games. My game with White goes like this, and my opponent just plays sort of the pedestrian, centralize the king kind of moves. I play my king here. Plays here. Now my plan is to play g4, but I just played g3 to put pressure. Because I thought f5's a bad move. So I'm just waiting a move and see if my opponent does something dumb. And my opponent grabbed the f-pawn and then was like, oh, no, wait, I don't... and like hesitated, put it back and thought for a while. And finally played f6, which is fine. But they almost played f5, or they could have played king c6 or something, and it's just putting stress on the opponent. Even if after 30 seconds they just play king e6 and nothing's changed, and then I play g4, it's just that extra stress. Like I played g3 and they had to pick another move. They had to decide if they're coming here, or if they're like coming here, if they're coming here, if they're playing this, So it's sometimes in these end games with the 30-second, which I now have a lot of practice in with Kostya. Sometimes in these end games, it's a matter of wearing your opponent out, right? Like making them make enough tough decisions that they eventually get tired, right? Jesse would say, like, they deplete their whatever system Z, and then something weird comes out, right? So my opponent played f6. I played g4, which is the right plan. It's what Jesse also kind of went for here. But now the king is here instead of here, so actually I can force through h5. And I do immediately. Black can't trap you on the side because you'll just take this pawn and go to the 2-for-1. King takes h5, f5, king g5, checks me, king here, probably checks me again just to say that he gave check here, here, here. And now, like an incredible tragic comedy blunder. Okay, folks? In this position, I think this was very influenced by Shankland coming by and being like, oh, it's over. Like his face just said, like, Black's lost. Like, Pruess executed the plan. Like, come on, resign so we can, discuss this as a group. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just play e4, and then Sam told my opponent to resign, and he was like, yeah, I'm losing, and resigned, and we went and analyzed. But after the camp, I realized that this position, black's actually still drawing, and that e4 is like a blunder. But it was kind of like we were both under hurry up. It's sort of like a tragic comedy, like I blunder the win here, and my opponent, blunders the resignation, but we were both under the sort of like, okay, let's move on. The truth is white can win this position by bringing the king over. But e4 allows an amazing draw, which is the black king just keeps coming. And then you can check. And check. So at some point, the king has to come to the third rank. And whenever it does, rook c5 is a draw. And rook d5 would be the same thing if white's king were on c3. Right? Like if we come back this way, rook d5, and it's a draw. And this is like a big surprise because in general, black, when they're down a pawn in a rook endgame, basically, yeah, it's a wow from Kostya because, and a beginner could find this idea maybe, but it's like Ding's rook g6, right? Where a beginner might play rook g6, but like a normal 2200 would not pin their own rook like that. A somewhat experienced player in the 1600 to 2400 range is not going to expect that the person down a pawn is ever trading rooks in a rook and pawn ending. Right? You're never trading rooks in a rook and pawn ending where you're down a pawn. Like almost any rook and pawn ending down a pawn you can draw, and almost any king and pawn ending down a pawn you can lose. So like you're never doing that. And white can even take the opposition in the pawn up endgame. But it's a draw because white can't flank the king usefully in this position. On king c5, you can't go around king e4 because of king b4. And on king d5, you can't flank this way because the a pawn's covering that one square. And, the only way to flank would be b4. And then, of course, if this weren't a rook pawn, you'd be winning by bringing your king to, the 6th rank to the left of here, right? To the left of the a file. But here you don't. So that would be a draw. However, the correct thing is that white can eventually win this position by bringing the king this way. And black's waiting, right? And waiting. And then you come here. And black can check you if they want, but there's no real salvation. Now the king comes this way. So at some point, they've got to go for this. Right? And we can go like takes here and here or whatever. And in general, the two pawns are going to beat the f-pawn in these scenarios. There's some specific positions that might be an exception, but in general, and that's part of the skill of it too, folks, is like you could mess this up. You certainly could mess this position up and draw with white, even as you transition to this pawn trade. But this is the best. This is the best that we can do. Is this. And if we transfer it at exactly the right moment and play all the precise moves for white, we can win with the A and B pawns against the F pawn. This is kind of like the maximum scenario for white. Cleanest, simplest approach to it. Okay, Kostya's asking me about which line? E4, takes, here, 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 here. Here, 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 here. Yeah. That does seem winning there. So let's go back a move. So maybe here black needs to give check. And I think you only go to d5 if the king plays king c2 in this position. Kostya, then you go d5. But if the king is on c3, then you keep giving the check. And any version of this, you can come here. And if the king comes back, only then are you forced here. And then against king c3, you have this in time. Here, trade, and you save it again. Yeah, that's a detail there as well to be careful of. So it's have to be very, very careful. And I'll say that I think even with the king coming to like c3 and then trading these pawns, it's probably 50-50 whether somebody wins. It's kind of like up in the air whether you execute it correctly or not for most, for an average, master playing a rook and pawn ending, probably still kind of 50-50. So that was one game. My other game with black, my opponent played this. So now I can finally show you guys an example of a race. And this video would be incomplete without at least one example of a proper race with these passed pawns against these passed pawns. Okay? So I played king f8. Sam didn't even like my first plan here. The point of g3, folks, by the way, is like you want to bring the king to c1, but when the rook takes on g2, well, by having the pawn on g3, it's slower for black to take your pawns. Does that make sense? g3 is an attempt at a simple improvement on the king to c1 plan. Right? It's just saying black's going to lose a whole extra move capturing these pawns, and that's going to help us queen first, right? I mean, these games are going to come down to one tempo. So that's the idea. I thought the problem with this is that black can get a very active king position on d6 where it can help stop the pawn. So that's what I went for. And Sam said my plan was stupid. But I played like here, here, here very quickly, right? And then king c1, rook here. And the point is this king is in range of helping to stop these pawns. I thought the downside to white's plan, white's getting way ahead on tempi, right? I'm so slow to make my pass pawns compared to white's, but I was like, the downside is this bad king on c1, and I'm gonna have this amazing king that actually gets in there and slows and stops these pawns. Sam's opinion was, you're never stopping connected pass pawns anyway, so even here against g3, he says, go for this plan with f6 that Kostya and Jesse used against king g3. He says, still just do this. I think my defense held up so-so, but Sam's probably right, so I'm just telling you that's what Sam thought. I wasn't yet convinced. So we go here, here. And, you know, against a move like rook a8, the point is that the king can just embrace the pawns. And from here, it just doesn't feel like we're in danger of getting queened on with our king here. We don't even need to, you know, hurry. Rook a5, rook g3. King d2 defending this pawn. And now I come here. You know, again, I want king c5 against like rook a8 or something. Now rook a7, though. My opponent comes. And here I got concerned and eventually backed off the king c5 idea. I thought a long time on this move. 4 minutes. I'd built up a lot of time on the previous moves, playing really fast. And so I spent 4 minutes on this move and finally decided to hold this pawn and come back. But it's very, very tricky because, you know, if you go for here and here, in this position, you could try g5, you could try rook g4, you could try rook b4, you could try king c5. I was concerned about both rook f6 and rook f4 in this position, you know, and the white king still within the box of the h-pawn if we trade rooks on f4. So I was really concerned about this. I mean, it was kind of like my plan was to show that my king was large and in charge here and holding those pawns, you know, able to sort of hold those pawns. But I decided, like, actually I need to keep this pawn to keep the rook from getting behind my pawns in some lines. So I went king e6. White plays rook b7 to get this pawn rolling. I take probably a5. No, b4. Rook h4, b4. Check here and here. This is accurate. A skill in these positions is you never know when to like switch which pawn you're running first, right? That's why like you can win or lose these positions from either side, right? Should white be just blind pushing the a pawn, or should they bring the b pawn up first? Like, who knows? And then same question for black, right? Should I just be running the g pawn? So b4, I played check here and just start running the h pawn. This pawn's kind of enough with nobody threatening to stop it, right? And it's very time consuming for white to move their rook to a7, to b7, to b8, to h8. That's where I'm getting back the time that I was behind in the strict pawn race. Is white trying to improve the position of their rook. Mine has easy access to a good square, and this is coming. Push them, baby, is clear, but people don't know in which order to push them, right? Or when to take time out to improve the rook. It's very tricky, easy to make mistakes in these positions. So I played h4, a5, h3. I'm just boom, 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 not going behind the pawn. And the reason is if you play this move too early, like after a5, if you play this kind of move too early, your opponent plays king b3 with tempo, hitting you here, and then something like this, for example, you can't get to h2. You committed the rook too soon. So it was very, very important to not play rook a2, even though it looks like you'd want to free this pawn and stop a6. I played this super, super risky, whereas like Jesse was kind of scared to play it risky. But Sam says that I actually put a lot of pressure on white to potentially lose this position by how precisely I played these moves, by, you know, living in the danger zone, not going rook a2. So I go h3, rook b8 gets played. Now he's coming behind it, and I still don't come here, g5, so I can defend the pawn like this and not be forced to trade. If you now put your rook behind, and then your opponent can go here, tagging the pawn, you can't play g4. You have to play h2, and then white can blind push the a pawn and force a draw by trading these pawns, right? And I already thought I can put pressure on white to potentially lose by keeping the game going with g5. a6, now I'm forced. No choice on rook a2, but by now rook h8 I have g4. a6, rook a2. Rook h8, offering the pawn trade on the draw. No. g4. b5. Would rook h1 instead of g5 be playable? Playable in the sense that you can draw a fault, but it's not winning. The way I'm playing is giving black the maximum chances of eventually winning the game. And now a very important move as well. King d5. Whew! This king wants to be the boss now, right? And white is in like grave danger. We've created a situation where technically white can draw, but it's like what I talked about in the Shanklin-Predke version of this game. It's a bunch of like really tricky only moves for white to draw. Very, very, like white has to find really, really hard moves. So king d5, king b3, boop. I got the room now. King here, boop. Hitting this. So now he's got to make it not check, right? So the king has to come off. Boom. Yeah. So rook b5, a7, rook a5. It looks like you're doing great, right? You can sack for the pawn and then play g3 and queen. You should win with your pawns against white's rook, even if it only has to spend one move capturing. But there's rook h5 check. So you always have to be like on the line about all this stuff. How about b6 to draw for white, like in this position? So there, I imagine I would take this pawn, attacking this, right? You'd have to push, and then I'd come here. And I think you've lost, right? This is like an example of a trap that I was leaving for white. I mean, this pawn's just threatening to take it. So here, take, g3. And then whichever pawn they go behind, you push the other one. And it's gone. So that's like how white's living in, you know, only move territory, right? Like we can play a move like b6 and lose here. It's very, very hard to choose the moves. This king is threatening to eat these pawns, but it's also threatening to go like f5, king e4, right? And then just, you know, sack your rook when you have to, but you like queen more pawns than white because you've got like 3 passed pawns at that point. So this is a very threatening move. When I played this move, I thought like very likely I would win. So it came like this, got off of that, rook b5 check. Have to watch out for this, very important move. f5, ramping up the pressure. King b4, we just pop back. Could b6, rook takes, king b5 potentially draw? I think not. Rook here. And then you check the opponent from there, get behind the pawn. Yeah, it's a tough situation for white. I would not be confident how to draw this position for white at this point. Rook h7 was played. And now I did the big calculatsk and played g3, winning. Whew, it's too late for white now. Oh, baby. This isn't what happened, but I must have thought that I could already win like this. Yeah, it's because of this king position, right? Boom, boom, goodbye. Right? And b6 doesn't change things. The king's here. That's that king activity. You guys remember that in the same kind of idea from the other side, black was winning and white was losing with the rook against the 2 pawns. But it's this king position that's threatening that I can go into the position with the rook and beat the pawns instead of losing to the pawns. So I played g3 and white's basically lost. right here after g3. But he plays one more very, very tricky move, which is also very useful to see, which is that even in a position where you've messed up and you can see that you're kind of losing, right? Like a7, I can take it. b6, I can take it. Rook h3, I'm queening. What you can see is that even in a position like this, if you're really alert, you can sometimes save the game with a shock move like e4 check right here. I think there was only one correct way to take here. Yeah, you have to take with the f pawn. You could have mistimed g3. If you take with the king, white can go boom, 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 boom. Right? This makes sense, folks? The king doesn't have c6 now. Boom. And now not only did I blunder the win, I might even lose, right? You guys see that? That I might lose this with that king takes here. Whew. So on e4, I have to take it with this pawn, opening up this rank, but I did, and it's okay. a7, g2. Yeah, there's nothing to do anymore for white. The slight concern with this is also that white could do a trick on you, like, you know, this kind of a thing. And, like, get here, and then you have to play this queen ending, which is an absolute mess to play a queen endgame like this, right? But I think the black king can hide on d4 without messing anything up against side checks. Oh, but then it gives up the c6 square, right? That's the problem. So this move here would have been really intense, but my opponent didn't play it. This is what I was calculating really carefully, right? Because if this now takes, right? Here, takes, and now your king doesn't have c6. But I had planned I could still come here even without king c6, I think, because against b6, it's not that hard to see, right? Rook check, king here. The king's position is still good enough to bully the king to the side and mate him, right? But even trickier is that against a7, you have to go check, and then wherever the king goes, you still have to play king c5 to stop b6, like against all these lines. Or like here, for example, right? You go king c5, letting them queen because you still have this. So I think that's what I finally calculated when my opponent played e4 check, was that like I could do this, play king here, take the sack, get back with rook b1, push the king to the a file, and press the king with my king. That is an extremely close call. And forcing your opponent to find all those little details in an endgame is going to occasionally turn up an extra half point for you here or there, right? Somebody's going to blunder something one time, now or then. But I played fe4 in this case, and after a7, g2, rook check, king here, rook here, now it's all just mopping up. If white plays b6, by the way, you know, don't take the rook and let white just queen. You have to just make a queen yourself, right? And then checkmate white while they're promoting their pawns. So that's why in this position, you know, I can queen and start checkmating. That's why the opponent brought the rook back here. And then once I took this, it's over. Resigns. So that is the Shanklin-Predke rook and pawn endgame. And yeah, I hope you guys see how critical this idea is, that when the king comes here, we get a race where both sides are going to have passed pawns. And so there's a lot of fine posturing, which Kostya and Jesse and other masters are doing around how to improve it, and when do they want to make the trade, and when do they want to start the race, and when are they cautious about it. But you have to understand that that's the fundamental endgame that's hiding under the surface of the whole previous 2 hours that we did. And yeah, I hope you guys learned something and stuck through it to there. It's very entertaining that the moves are so complicated in those race endgames. You know, as I alluded to at the beginning, I really enjoy those kind of endgames. I think they're really exciting to play. Some would find them stressful. You can't calculate everything, Poof's chess, from the beginning. Like, if you're making a choice to go king e1, rook takes g2, rook takes a5, there's no way you can calculate everything. But what you can eyeball is, are you approximately even on tempi, approximately ahead 1 or 2 tempi, approximately ahead more than 2 tempi? That's going to be obvious. It's going to feel like you just, raffle stomping. Or are you behind 1 to 2 tempi? And you can get a little bit of a sense of that. You'll often be wrong by 1 tempo, which is, I think, even at a top level, I think, to ask yourself, in this position here, are you 1 tempo up or down, I think is a little bit hard to say, because even here it's like, well, this rook can get to A1 and this rook can't get to H8, so is white up 1 tempo from A5 or not? Like, you have to develop some sort of fine sense of it. Or, is it so bad the king's passive that you want to go here and lose more time and keep the king like this, versus, when you check and get your rook to A1, which I said is so great, maybe then you put white's king on a good square on G3 or C3, I don't know. And yeah, it'll always be by a half tempo as well, gritty pawns, if we want to be very precise. But I'm just saying, like, I don't think you can get more precise than about plus or minus 1 tempo on that eyeballing estimate that Poof's Chess is asking about. So you've got a sense, like, it's about equal on time. I'm ahead 1 to 2 tempi, or, half to 1.5 tempi, or I'm behind half to 1.5 tempi, or I'm ahead more than that. And that'll be pretty obvious to almost any master, Like, if the whole thing were happening a whole file up the board, if black's pawn were on A6 and white on A5 and B4, rook on B3, king on F2, white rook on B6, you move that whole queenside up 1 file, then I think Jesse and Kostya would very confidently and easily go for the race endgame. Because 1 rank up the board is 2 tempi. Each white pawn is 1 step closer to queening. So that's 2 full tempi. So then they're going to feel like white's 2.5 to 3.5 tempi ahead, or in Jesse's case, 2 to 3 tempi. 2.5 to 3.5 tempi ahead instead of half a tempo ahead. It's going to feel much less, it's not even going to feel scary to go for the race. They're just going to be totally confident that they're going to be queening. But then the other thing I want to say is, even once you get into those endgames, the play is tricky enough that you could go into the endgame up 1.5 tempi and allow the opponent to quickly equalize or even get ahead. And it's still within the range of possibility to lose if you're up 1.5 tempi. Those endgames have ample room for outplaying. You would expect at least 2 mistakes per player for masters playing that position. And if you guys are, 1600s or 1200s or 800s playing other 800s, 1200s, 1600s, you can kind of expect every move to be a mistake. And there's a lot of room for you to, play a couple, nice technical moves and come out ahead, or calculate, a winning tactic at some point that lets you promote. There's lots of pretty sick tactics in these endgames. All right. That was enough. We're really going to stop that episode there. Thanks for everybody who stuck with it. Long form content in the dojo, right? Yeah. And now let me change